You were scoring high on ESG and DEI, and your score was 0 on your quality. These are internal quality performance measures.
What is it that you get paid currently?
That's a big number, sir.
Well, let me help you out. It's $32.8 million this year. They found one door seal being lubricated with Dawn liquid dish soap and cleaned with a wet cheesecloth, and another was being checked with a hotel room key card.
The door issue was an issue in manufacturing, and I'm representing engineering. The engineering design of the door is not implicated.
The MAX accidents, again, tragic. The design was wrong.
Given the fact that your airplanes are falling out of the sky, do you think that any of that has to do with the fact that you really don't make that much anymore in this country or in-house?
I would like to apologize on behalf of all of our Boeing associates spread throughout the world, past and present, for your losses.
Complete gobbledygook.
Before I begin my opening remarks, I would like to speak directly to those who lost loved ones on Lion Air Flight 610 and the Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302. I would like to apologize on behalf of all of our Boeing associates spread throughout the world, past and present, for your losses. They're gut-wrenching. And I apologize for the grief that we have caused. And I want you to know we are totally committed in their memory to work and focus on safety for as long as we're employed by Boeing. So again, I'm sorry. Nearly every second, a Boeing commercial or defense product takes off and lands somewhere around the world, making us responsible for the safety of millions of passengers and flight crews every day, including our men and women in uniform. Aerospace safety is built on a robust industry-wide system that relies on self-disclosure, accountability, and continuous learning. This scrutiny, to be held to the very highest standard, is fundamental to why commercial aviation is by far the safest mode of transportation today. I come from this industry, and I know full well that this is an industry where we simply must get it right every single time. I've served as president and CEO of Boeing since January of 2020, following these tragic accidents. I joined the aviation industry as president and CEO of GE Aircraft Engines. My introduction to aerospace safety was after the tragic accident in 1989 of United Airlines Flight 232 in Sioux City, Iowa, due to an uncontained engine failure. It led to sweeping changes in our industry's safety management processes and contributed significantly to flight safety going forward.
Do you think Boeing has done enough to date to make those kinds of corrections? And what would you say to the whistleblowers who have come forward and faced retaliation?
Senator, thank you for the question. I ask myself that question every day. Have we done enough? I will remind everyone the findings and the accidents. And we all participated in the investigative work. We saw the conclusions by virtue of the NTSB reports and the local regulators' reports. These issues were attributed to the development of the airplane and a software package referred to as MCAS. And there we took responsibility for that error.
You accept that Boeing was responsible for those crashes and 346 deaths?
I accept that MCAS and Boeing are responsible for those crashes.
But
yes, sir.
Has enough been done to date already?
So this is the answer to that question. The development process for an airplane starts with an engineering effort. So we have revamped our engineering effort at large. We have created a series of design practices, including a new one referred to as human factors. It speaks directly to the work that needed to be done to prevent MCAS from creating the environment that those pilots faced at that moment. So we did that. We established a safety management system. We learned from the FAA and from our airline customers what it was and how to implement it. We've been listening to it. We tuned that safety management system into every airplane that flies every second of every day so that we could learn from those airplanes.
Have you been aware of how Boeing has complied with requests for information from this committee?
Probably not by line item. No, sir.
Well, let me show you a sample of the data produced by Boeing in response to requests by this committee. I'll show you a bigger display, and the details have been provided to you. Are you able to make sense of this?
No, sir.
Complete gobbledygook.
Yes, sir.
This is what Boeing has provided to this committee in response to our requests for information. Can you justify these productions?
I would describe it precisely as you did, and I can't justify. And I will most definitely follow up.
So prior to our last hearing, one of the articles I read, whether fair or unfair, talked about your disclosures. It's probably the SEC, where you were scoring high on ESG and DEI, and your score was 0 on your quality. These are internal quality performance measures. Can you speak to that report?
That's a fact.
Because the point being is Boeing's management, are they concentrating on DEI and ESG, and at the expense of really meeting your quality performance measures?
Senator, I've never seen those two things ever come into conflict. I don't believe my team has ever allowed for them to come into conflict in any way.
It's not necessarily conflict, it's what you're emphasizing, where you're putting your management emphasis.
Yes. Well, again, Senator, there's a comp system. There's also what we work on every day, all day, knowing how important and critical it is for the future of our company. Safety and quality is it. It's been that way since January of 2020 because of what we have been responding to. Safety and quality. That is what we talk about.
What actions have you personally taken as CEO to investigate instances of retaliation and intimidation at Boeing and to hold managers and leadership accountable for punishing whistleblowers?
Senator, I'll start again. With respect to leadership and culture, communication, we are always out there with respect to our policy on retaliation. Not accepted. We will take the disciplinary actions that are necessary. And we do have a process. If I get a retaliation claim, I have a team. Again, they're independent. They are meant to investigate that, and they're meant to assume that allegation is correct. Let's go find out. They are not always determined to be correct. They are not always.
I would suggest, because you couldn't answer how many folks have been disciplined or fired for retaliation, I would suggest that a personally involved CEO might be able to get us that information, and that if you talked about the discipline that you took towards people who retaliated against whistleblowers, there might be less retaliation.
Mr. Calhoun, what is it that you get paid currently?
Senator, that's well disclosed in our proxy documents in each of the years that I've been employed.
Yeah, but what is it?
It's a big number, sir.
Well, let me help you out. It's $32.8 million this year. Does that sound right?
Yes, it does.
That's a 45% increase over last year. Does that sound right?
Yes, it does.
What is it you get paid to do exactly?
I get paid to run the Boeing company.
Yeah. So just help me understand that. I mean, do you get paid for transparency? Is that one of the metrics for your income?
I think the board counts on me for transparency.
Really? Because you're under investigation for falsifying 787 inspection records. The Boeing's under criminal investigation for the Alaska Airlines flight. You were investigated by DOJ for criminal conspiracy to defraud the FAA. This is all in your tenure. This doesn't sound like a lot of transparency to me. What about safety? Is that a component of your salary?
It sure is, Senator.
You know, have you seen the reports that the subcontractor that you used to make that door piece that fell out of the sky, that when the FAA went and toured the facility, they found one door seal being lubricated with Dawn liquid dish soap and cleaned with a wet cheesecloth, and another was being checked with a hotel room key card. Does that sound like safety to you?
Senator, I think our relationship with that particular supplier has been well documented, reviewed by the FAA, and most certainly us. And I'm very intent on acquiring that company so that none of that ever happens.
You know, the FAA also says that Boeing still has not implemented the recommended steps back from 2019 and 2020 after the MAX crashes. You still have not taken the appropriate safety procedures or implemented what they recommended. I mean, how, if safety is a component of your $33 million compensation package, I mean, how can you possibly qualify for any of this? What about quality? Is quality part of your compensation package?
Senator, I meet with the FAA pretty regularly. They don't hold anything back, and I'm not aware of anything that has been cited with respect to those accidents that we haven't taken action on.
Really? Because we've had whistleblowers. You said you'd listen to whistleblower testimony. We've had multiple whistleblowers come before this committee and allege that Boeing is cutting every possible corner on quality and safety, not just in the past, but now. They've alleged that you've eliminated safety inspections, that there are fewer in quality and there are fewer inspectors doing quality inspections out there. They've alleged that when they raised quality issues and concerns, they were reassigned, they were retaliated against, they were physically threatened. That doesn't sound like attention to quality to me. And yet you're getting paid $33 million a year. It's extraordinary.
Senator, we have increased our quality inspectors significantly.
How much has your stock price increased while you've been at Boeing?
It hasn't, and I don't watch it much.
Have you done any stock buybacks while you've been at Boeing?
Not in my job, no.
How about your profits? Have your profits increased at all while you've
I haven't had any profits, sir.
I'm sorry?
I have not had any profits.
Yeah. Proud of this safety record.
Of our Boeing people.
You're proud of this safety record?
I am proud of every action we have taken.
Every action you've taken?
Yes, sir.
Wow. Wow. There's some news for you. Well, behind you can't see it. Behind you, the folks are showing pictures of the people who are the victims of your safety record. I think we can all see them. And I think the American public, when they fear to get on their airplanes, they understand your safety record. And frankly, sir, I think it's a travesty that you're still in your job.
So it's $1 billion, about.
Yes,
I won't hold you
something
to
north of $1 billion.
North of $1 billion dedicated to the implementation
Yes.
of the plan moving forward relative to people. Are those costs, are those dollars actually going to be dollars dedicated going into the pockets of Boeing workers around the world?
It will pay for all of the time and training that they get. It's not a compensation. This is an investment the company will make to take people off of their airplane job and make sure that we train them to be ready to do the airplane job.
So they're not going to be compensated for the additional training that
Well, they get paid for every hour they're there, yes.
I think that there was a culture, though, that safety was not first, from then until today?
I think in that particular instance, I think that the analysis that supported the decisions that were made at the time were an error. And I can't state exactly the threads that were drawn that created that error, but we've built a system to make that much more robust today so that will never happen again.
So what happened? What went wrong? How did we miss the mark?
Again, Senator, you asking about a specific issue. I'm talking about the broad process.
Well, I'm talking about doors flying off of planes. I'm talking about using parts that are misfits. I'm talking about planes crashing.
Well, Senator, the door issue was an issue in manufacturing, and I'm representing engineering. The engineering design of the door is not implicated. However, the engineering actions through all of that remain, as I explained, focused on every learning that comes out from the fleet, uses the robust processes that we have in conjunction with the FAA. They're all overseen by the FAA, and implements all safety precautions in the fleet from an engineering perspective here.
The MAX accidents, again, tragic. The design was wrong. The NTSB reports, all of the investigative reports, specifically identified an error with MCAS. MCAS created an environment in the cockpit at a crucial moment.
Okay.
And,
then fast forward. Now
and so
now we're losing. We're
no,
using
and so
misfit.
Mr. McKenzie, what he refers to is about probably half our people, engineering in particular, work on the development of airplanes, and half work in support of production operations. So with respect to the accidents, where we were focused in the description of the changes, and they're big and they're significant across the engineering department, we're focused on preventing the design problem from ever happening again. Human factors, a whole new team, a whole new approach, a set of disciplines around it, et cetera. Alaska, very different. That was a manufacturing miss.
346 people died because of a faulty control system, the MCAS system, that Boeing knew was going to cause a crash at some point, correct?
I would not say the latter part of that sentence.
People at Boeing knew.
There was a judgment that was made by ourselves, our design engineers, and the certification process that could never happen, but it did.
Well, now you're going to make me really angry because the evidence shows, in fact, that the engineers working on this plane knew that that faulty control system drove the nose down under certain circumstances, and pilots, in fact, Lions Air and Ethiopian Air struggled to lift that nose as the plane plummeted toward the sea. And they couldn't do it because they didn't know what was happening. And the reason they didn't know what was happening is Boeing concealed it. They concealed it from the FAA, and therefore Boeing was charged with defrauding the United States of America. And the prosecution was deferred because Boeing paid a fine, but no individual was held accountable. In my view, and I said it at the time, individuals should be held accountable for those deaths. Don't you agree?
Senator, it's wrong for me to reinvestigate an investigation that was
I'm not talking about reinvestigating.
And
I'm talking about a judgment. We're here about accountability. It is a moment of reckoning for Boeing that will help Boeing in the long run, because the only way to course correct is to face the truth and confront the need for action. And I'm asking you, shouldn't individuals be held accountable, individuals who are still at Boeing and who may be in positions of responsibility now?
Senator Blumenthal, we are responsible. We are responsible. The Department of Justice and the Boeing team and all the investigations and all the judgments that were ultimately taken, I'm not here to second guess them.
Only one individual was ever criminally prosecuted, a pilot. He was acquitted. And I'm saying to you, and I'm saying to the Department of Justice, individuals should be held accountable.
Finally, the airlines and their maintenance crews and the pilots. Can you just kind of talk the way through that? Even if Boeing doesn't reach perfection, there are other steps beyond that to try and catch errors. So go through that process, please.
I'll start. I'll turn it over to Howard. Alaska was a manufacturing defect. It created an unsafe airplane. Perfection is what our job is, and it has to be absolute. We inspected every airplane that has that plug quickly. We know it was a single airplane. And as I said, for all of the media coverage of Boeing airplanes over the course of this year, I believe that was the only manufacturing defect that's related. Now, so what we do first is we close that down, period. We look at the value chain from the delivery of the airplane all the way back through our supplier. And we take dramatic steps to make sure that at every step of that value chain, that door could never leave the airplane in flight. This was related to our Spirit supplier. And I'll do this just for effect, and I'll let Howard cover a little more. We used to inspect those fuselages when they arrived at our factories. And we had a lot of inspection sites. And then we would fix all the nonconformances that we would find in those inspections in our factories. And it created more movement than we should have. So immediately following this accident, we moved 13 inspection stations down to Wichita. And we demanded that Spirit treat us as an inspection authority on their premise and treat it like an FAA ticket, so that not a single fuselage would leave that facility that wasn't in perfect condition to come to ours. That was a movement of roughly 200 inspection engineers to do that. And then it required probably at least that or double that from Spirit to help us man those stations so they could learn what this process is. So I say that just because that's how big this effort has been for us, and that is how we've done it. And we have then sent that message to every supplier with respect to perfection of the products that they deliver to us so that they can move through our line in regular order.
You're in charge of a company, you're getting paid $33 million a year. You're in charge of a company that has systematically, over decades now, shipped out its jobs, shipped out its production. Over the last decade, while you've either been in charge as CEO or on the board, stock prices have rose 600% at Boeing. You've, in fact, done $59 billion in returning cash to shareholders, $20 billion of that in dividends, $39 billion of that in stock buyback. Some people are doing great here. I'm just wondering, given the fact that your airplanes are falling out of the sky, do you think that any of that has to do with the fact that you really don't make that much anymore in this country or in-house? I mean, hasn't it been a mistake to hollow out the company and ship your production and your manufacturing and your know-how to other places around the world instead of doing it yourself, the American engineers, American workers?
Senator Hawley, I think I read an annual report going all the way back to the introduction of the 747, which highlighted the fact that 65% of that airplane would be sourced by U.S. manufacturers here and there. And the other thing I do know that since 2015, again, I don't have all that history, but before that, we have actually brought more work to the U.S. than we have taken out of the U.S. And at an absolute level, our work in the U.S. is in the high 80%. And that is unlike any other industry I have ever worked in.
These are your suppliers, you're saying? These
Yes.
are your subcontractors,
Yes.
right? The ones who are using Dawn dish soap to test their doors and cheesecloth to test the plugs, right? Those. Your CFO, Brian West, recently went on the record and said that Boeing probably got a little too far ahead of itself on the topic of outsourcing. You agree with that?
He was speaking directly to our decision to go after Spirit.
So he was right?
He was speaking directly to our decision to vertically integrate Spirit.
So he was right. You got too far ahead of yourself on outsourcing for all of these years. Is Boeing going to change course on this?
We are most certainly changing course on Spirit.
You've got 32,000 machinists. These are American workers who work for you. These are Boeing employees in the Pacific Northwest. You're in contract negotiations with them right now. 32,000, that's a lot of them. The last time that they got a contract was 16 years ago. Do you remember the terms of that contract?
I don't. It was a very long contract.
Yeah, well, they got 1% wage increases over 8 years. 1% over 8 years. You got a 45% increase just last year, and you're making $33 million. Do you think maybe these folks deserve a raise?
Oh, they will definitely get a raise.
Good. I hope it's a substantial one. And I hope that maybe this will be an opportunity for Boeing under new leadership to reverse course and actually start making things again, start making things in this country again, and start paying its people well. I've listened to your testimony, and it seems like the gist of it seems to be that if you could just get your employees to comply, follow the rules, follow your management techniques, et cetera, things would be better. I don't think the problem's with the employees.
Oh, it's
actually.
not. It is not.
I think the problem's with you. It's the C-suite. It's the management. It's what you've done to this company. That's where the problem is. The problem's at the top. Your engineers, they're probably the best in the world. Your machinists, they're outstanding. You're the problem. And I just hope to God that you don't destroy this company before it can be saved.
Aren't you alarmed that airplanes manufactured by Boeing are rolling in this very dramatic and potentially unsafe way, doing damage to the planes that you've manufactured?
Senator, the Dutch roll is an oscillation due to the rudder actuator responding to a particular circumstance that it's in. We think it's an individual circumstance for this airplane that thus far, given the data we have, indicates that this airplane underwent some unique circumstance that is particular to this airplane, and it doesn't give us any cause for concern for the fleet.
The hearing is adjourned.